Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I begin in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and welcome to this week's edition of Behind the Headlines with you here on British Muslim TV, Sky Channel 752, and also online, www.britishmuslim.tv, with me, Ahmad, Bostan, with you for the next hour, inshallah. Now, regular viewers of the program will be familiar with our format. Every Friday night, we join you live, and every Friday night, we have the honor, the privilege, the immense privilege of being able to interview an inspirational personality, a leader in their profession. The aim and objective is simple: to inspire and motivate all of us to do more, to do better, and to do well in whatever we choose to do. And I'm delighted to say that my guest tonight is a leader in community organizing, someone who has played a hugely instrumental role in the city of Birmingham and beyond for many, many years, whether it's been moments of crisis such as the terrible riots we saw in 2011, or indeed the opportunities that the region of the West Midlands has with the Commonwealth Games, the City of Culture, and so many other exciting opportunities coming along the way. Saidul Saeed has been at the forefront, at the center of leading community organizing. But who is he? Where did he come from? How has he ended up in the influential position that today he is in? And I'm honored and privileged that he is my guest on tonight's program. Assalamu alaikum, brother Saeed. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for joining us on Behind the Headlines tonight.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah khair, brother Ahmad, and everybody at British Muslim TV, and of course the viewers and audiences online tuning in. Jazakallah khair for having me.
Absolute pleasure to have you with us. Now, you and I, Saeed, have spoken frequently, but very rarely do we get the opportunity to speak about you, your life. You were born and bred in the great nation of Bangladesh. You came here as a young boy, just 7 or 8 years old, and the journey began. Tell me about those, if you still recall that time, ending up in the UK, a new country, a new society, a new language, a new culture. What was it like for you as a young boy entering those streets of Birmingham all those years ago?
My father is retired now. So he used to be an imam, and he was asked to come to the UK and be an imam in Scunthorpe and in several other towns where there were small Bangladeshi communities. So in the mid-80s, it kind of seemed like his posting was a bit too long term. He left Bangladesh to become an imam in just 2 weeks after I was born in 1978. So we joined him. So when I say we, my mom, myself, and my 2 sisters from Bangladesh. But again, we will find ourselves moving around. We originally lived in East London and then to various other towns. And he was invited to Birmingham again with an opportunity to perhaps be a maktab tutor and an imam in the neighborhood that I still live in Lozells. So it's a very important diaspora story, second generation, moving to the UK in the mid-80s, although that was an awful long time ago. But one of the striking points is, having moved to Birmingham, we moved to a neighborhood which soon after had riots, known as the Handsworth riots of 1985. So you move to a city, and one of your first experience in the city is carnage, fear, and huge amount of upset.
And what was that like for you as a young boy entering this new city? And as you said, your first experience, not a positive one. How did that make you feel at that age?
Oh no, we weren't well off. When you in Birmingham, Lozells at that time wasn't a well sought after neighborhood to live in. There were a huge amount of, it was council properties, huge amount of work needed to be done to properties, and yeah, we were stuck. We didn't have somewhere to stay. An amazing community spirit. However, we stayed in other people's houses, other people's homes. One was an elder who was a World War II veteran, and we stayed in his home. And I still remember those folks really well. So I don't really remember so much about the rioting and so forth because I was too young to understand it. But I vividly remember those folks that helped me. I remember, my primary school teacher who, helped my dad sort out, the issues with the council housing. When I missed school one day and went with him to the neighborhood office, and I couldn't explain things to him. My dad English was poor, so I remember all of those people that helped us. From my primary school teacher, who's now, of course, she's retired, and along those elders, who, mashallah, some of them are still alive. A large number of them have passed away, who gave us sanctuary in their own home. I'm not sure how many of us now, or even myself, will accommodate another family who might be struggling, who might be having difficulty somewhere to live, homeless even.
So out of that adversity, that difficulty, you experienced the very warmth of community, the very warmth of communities coming together in a way that, as you said, you seldom see, you rarely see in today's society all those years later. How was it for you at school? Did you enjoy school?
Primary school was amazing. I serve on the school governing body to give back. It's at that way at the bottom of my street. So it's the kind of support and attention that the teachers had. Secondary school was tough. I went to a boys' secondary school which was closed down in year 11. So it was really difficult, inner city, huge amount of youth violence, and having to navigate it in some intrinsic ways. But I got to appreciate the kind of difficulties that young men were going through, most of whom were my friends at school. So growing up wasn't absolutely easy. We never had everything, but we never, I learned this word, quite well. Viewers will know, written about in sociology and elsewhere a lot more, about deprived. When you grow up, you never thought about that word. Yeah, you had to choose which brother and sister gets to go on the trip to Alton Towers, Drayton Manor, because your parents couldn't afford to pay for all of you to go for your year. But and your kind of Eid clothes were like semi-school uniform clothes. But you never felt like, and we grew up without a car, so you had to pull the trolley with the onions and the rice sack in it. But you didn't feel as if you were second class or subhuman, because everyone around you was making ends meet as well.
When you experienced the difficulties of your secondary school education, how did you emerge from that? Because it's very easy to have that negative experience and just completely shut off from that whole system, become a bit truant and mess around and become disengaged. And sadly, so many in that environment would have negative experiences with the law as well. How did you cope with that?
So I was a Hifz student. So, I was memorizing the Quran. Before I went to secondary school, in between year 5 and I think year 8 in secondary school, I went to a madrasa. And I studied in a madrasa where, they kind of taught you impeccable manners. I don't know if your viewers remember, the video clip shared, those madrasa students watching the England match and going crazy when England scores. I was one of them. And so they teach you this huge amount of respect, dignity. I was absolutely gobsmacked when I came to secondary school and saw the amount of real misogyny, boys towards women, and other things that were around us. But the way you are able to navigate all of this is, remember, my dad was in public life as an imam, so I got to see how he handled people and issues, particularly when folks used to come to our house, front room like this, to talk to him. So it was easier to be, having the teaching of my deen as a kind of yardstick, not to get myself stuck in those kind of avenues. And at the same time, I have to share, a lot of young men would probably realize this, is that my dean, my Hifz, was also something that stopped me from getting beaten up. So, if you were that young man in our class who was trying to do a Hifz, who never got in people's way, you kind of got protected by the top 5 toughest in your year, in your school, including the non-Muslims.
Wow.
So, being able to kind of stick to those kind of principles were really helpful.
And that's empowering to hear. And actually, you're the second guest in 2 weeks to actually talk about that. The fact that your deen, your relationship with your religion, which very much came from your household, mashallah, in the form of your father being an imam, kept you on track and kept you away from all of those things that can really destroy a lot of young people, not just in that time, but for many years to come. Criminality and getting involved with such activities are very difficult circle to break away from. But alhamdulillah, you were able to do that despite the deprivation and the difficulties that you had growing up. We're in conversation with Saidul Saeed, who is a leader in community organizing, someone who has pioneered so many initiatives around the empowerment of not just British Muslims, but the wider community at large in some of the most deprived areas of the country. And he's speaking to us about his journey in life. If you've got a question for Brother Saeed, please do get in touch with us. The phone lines are open. 01924 231 083 is the studio number. That's 01924 231 083. You can also get in touch on Twitter. We're at British Muslim TV. We are also British Muslim TV on Facebook. We would love to hear from you on the program today. Your questions, your comments. After the break, we'll be talking more about Brother Saeed's journey. Where did he go after school? Was he a university student? Did he end up in higher education? We'll be talking more about his journey. And remember, if you've got any comment you wish to make at any point in the program, those phone lines, Twitter lines, and Facebook is open to you to participate as you wish. At British Muslim TV on Twitter, British Muslim TV on Facebook, and that phone number again, 01924 231 083. That's 01924 231 083. It's Behind the Headlines, British Muslim TV. We'll be back right after this break. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Behind the Headlines here on British Muslim TV. And tonight we have the huge honor of speaking to Brother Saidul Saeed, who is a leader in community organizing, someone who has pioneered the empowerment in leadership of so many young people, women, people from deprived backgrounds across the country. But what's his journey? And Saeed has been speaking about how he very much grew up in a state of what you would perhaps describe as deprivation, economic deprivation, but that was not deprivation in the sense of community, a very strong sense of community. Families that welcomed his family, mashallah, allowed them to reside in their homes. A very tough time, no doubt, for his family when he was growing up, but a time through which, alhamdulillah, he studied Hifz. He also went on to secondary school. And Saeed, we left you at secondary school before the break, a challenging time for you. Was there any support out there available to you for your academia? Clearly, you were someone who had a very good work ethic. You were clearly doing your Hifz. But the academic challenges that you had, was there any support available to give you help with that?
Yeah, well, Ahmad, it was AA Smith's in Birmingham City Centre. And we never had the kind of volume of tuition centres that you see right now across the city. Definitely not online learning. So in a school like that, which is pretty tough to even get through a lesson without drama, you had to do self-taught. So you had to get through your GCSE with revision handbooks. And yeah, that AA Smiths came in really handy. But alhamdulillah, I got through the GCSEs and moved on to college, to A levels, studying things like sociology and law, And I was looking forward to going to Nottingham to study law at university, but my father fell ill. And he was determined to support me through higher education. But listen, I'm the eldest son
Mm.
in the family. My dad's not well, and I was thinking, man, if I go away, he's going to be contributing to my time away. My friends at the university who were there before me were all set up already. They got me accommodation in Nottingham, even got me the Islamic Society membership card ready. But I didn't go. I stayed at home, went to University of Birmingham, and I became a home student. So my uni life was more not a campus life, more of a, away from my lectures. I was soon back in my neighborhood, heavily involved in youth and community work between my lectures and studies and home life.
And alhamdulillah, that decision you made to stay home with your father, a very admirable decision, but a decision that I suppose was indicative of the strong family values that you had been raised with. And even though your father would have been pushing you in the other direction, go out, son, go and explore your education, don't worry about me, you chose to stay at home, and at a very young age as well.
Money, you see, so when you grow up knowing the value of what £5 is, I could have gone through a week at college with a fiver. Now, my son who's at college, I don't think that'll be enough. But when you understand money, when you grow up in the empathy and sometimes sympathy of other people, not just your own family members, but other people in your community, it's not a hard decision to think a bit selflessly. And the opportunities here, it's not as if I didn't get a very good higher education, and I'm ever so grateful because when I graduated, it was September. My first graduate interview was September 13th, 2001. So you can imagine what my interview was like 2 days after 9/11. So it's I'm absolutely grateful, alhamdulillah, all the way for the opportunities I had. But it's that ethic about you have a duty, as opposed even from a young age, responsibility, not just when you get married and have kids and you got your own house to worry about. Your duty doesn't start then. Your duty starts the moment you can walk, and the moment you can lift yourself, the moment you can help carry shopping bags.
So you graduated, alhamdulillah. You managed to go to the University of Birmingham, a very prestigious and well sought after university, and I speak with absolute partiality there, as I'm a graduate of that university myself a few years later. That first job interview you spoke about, 2 days after the terrible atrocities of 9/11, Islamophobia absolutely rife at that time, and sadly many years thereafter, and even to this day. What was that position that you applied for, and what was that interview like?
Yeah, so it was with a charity, so you can guess my trajectory. As a money advisor, supporting people with debt problems, issues with money, from rent arrears to all sorts of other financial problems. So it was a debt advice charity, and it's a wonderful opportunity to develop skills and so forth. So for me, it was an amazing opportunity job. Yes, 2 days after 9/11, I didn't experience any Islamophobia in that day of interviews. What I did experience was shock at some of the comments other people made, particularly some of the non-Muslim candidates. Things that were scary to hear, things like America deserved it, which, of course, at that point, I didn't fully understand. I did an interview on Wednesday night with Asking University History Department, and at that point, it never dawned on me that things were going to be crashing down on Muslims in the convening years. Because I've just come out, I've done a social policy, sociology degree, human rights, rule of law, democracy were like paramount things that we analyzed. So at that point, I was none the wiser. Of course, it was an absolute shock to hear this kind of world event, which looked like a movie on our screens.
Absolutely. And despicable extremes on both sides that came out, those anti-Muslim sentiments channeled towards the Muslim community, the, as you said, deplorable language people were using, totally not thinking of the huge amount of innocent people that lost their lives that day. And sadly, in many attacks that we have seen, both far right and Daesh linked attacks thereafter, and unfortunately the huge amount of hate that comes from those atrocities. But you went for that interview on the 13th of September. You did you acquire that position? Were you successful in that particular quest?
Alhamdulillah, yes. Glad to have been selected, and that kind of started my career thinking about, what some people call the community sector or the third sector or the charity sector, and several different roles leading up to my current role for the past 9 years as a community organizer. But yes, it was an absolute eye-opener, and learning about debt money advice, which is, of course, to this day is still a taboo in the Muslim community. We'll probably talk about drugs before we talk about debt. Basically. So yeah, to this day, I still use the skills from my training. In fact, I've never stopped using skills that you learn about the law and how to support people. So it's been an amazing, and it's absolutely gratifying to help people deal with their and give them really good advice around dealing with issues that are, some people get very suicidal,
Yes.
That's the absolute extreme, and other people, relationships are affected.
But why did you choose a charity sector? Here you were, a graduate of the University of Birmingham, no less, going out into the big wide world. There's private finance, there's all sorts of very well-paid careers that you could have got yourself into. Why charity? Why community? Did you feel that you were perhaps, yes, doing the right thing ethically and morally, but were you assured that it's going to pay the bills going forward?
Absolutely. So, and most of the jobs weren't permanent. Most of the jobs were time specific. But no, you gotta there's that saying, isn't it? Like, you do what you love and you won't work a single day in your life. Although you probably get yourself burnt out working, like, when you don't know what's work and what's time to switch off. But when you're in that mode, when you're in that habit, and I wanted the training. I wanted to have the level of expertise and training that these charities had, because beyond my job, I was using it. When you go to Salah in the masjid, after namaz, someone will pull out their letter in their pocket, says, "Hafsab, can I talk to you about this?" And you do, you help them, you guide them. But it is the principle, it's the upbringing, it's been to seeing in a front room like this, my dad helping people. It isn't a case of, what, if I do this, I won't make money. Of course, I've got friends in business who say, Saeed, if you came into business with us, like, what, we'd do really well. Your work ethic, and how you work in charity sector fundraising, you'd do it really well if we were to do it for profit. And of course, in Islam, we accept that it's perfectly plausible. You can make profit, and develop wealth, so long as what you do with it is of significance and of benefit to you, your family, and your community. So I didn't see it as a way of, man, I could have gone to other careers and made more money. I saw it as, what do I want to do that, I'm going to be satisfied as a job. And of course, at that time, we were the first generation, graduating. So we never had a huge amount of pioneers ahead of us telling us there were other things you can go to, like amazing stuff like broadcast journalism with Ahmad, and I'm sure Hassan Patel and others are watching.
Yes.
From various different sets. So we never had enough of access to pioneers. So you never knew what the range of things were. But no, I'm again very delighted and happy, alhamdulillah, for the years and decades spent in the sector.
And we'll talk more about this after the break, because we are coming up to a break. But sadly, this decision-making process that clearly you had is not one that a lot of young people have nowadays. And sadly, the fast money culture that has been created, I want to get rich quick, has resulted in so many of our young Muslims ending up in places where they are struggling to get out. And it's something we have to talk about. It's our obligation to speak about it, however difficult it is. And Saeed, you're someone who spends a lot of your time helping those very young people that we speak of, not just from the Muslim community, but from many communities at large. The phone lines are open, dear viewers, so you are most welcome to call in with your questions and comments. 01924231083. We're also at British Muslim TV on Twitter if you would like to send a tweet or a Facebook post on British Muslim TV Facebook. We'll be back right after this break. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Behind the Headlines here on British Muslim TV with me, Ahmad Bostan, with you for the next half an hour or so in the great, mashallah, Friday evening of this beautiful night. It is a very cold night out there, but nevertheless beautiful, alhamdulillah. We are honored and privileged to be in conversation with senior community organizer, pioneer of leadership in the Muslim and wider communities, Brother Saidul Saeed, here on the show. Now, Saeed, before the break, I asked you the question that I think is so important for so many of our viewers, particularly parents who are watching, really worried about their young children that are growing up nowadays, and the culture of fast money that's been created, and the way in which, unfortunately, such a culture or such a desire can lead young people to a very unpleasant place. Where does that come from? Where does that urge for fast money come from? Is it a decision of the individual themselves?
No. So I think let's do a bit of sociology on a Friday now on British Muslim TV.
Why not?
Basically, yes, we can talk about the influence of social media. We can talk about influence of influencers, the influence of different music genres, and you know, a popular culture about being successful, having money, you know, being popular, looking good, you know, all of those things. And of course, they're very powerful because billions are spent on advertising, on hitting the target audiences, which are, you know, our children, our younger brothers and sisters. Of course, so, you know, that's there. But there are individuals, and we can't blame individual young people like, listen, what's the matter with you? Like, you grew up in the same neighborhood as this person and you made the wrong choices. What that means is we deter from our responsibility. Our responsibility in our Muslim community comes from particularly the institutions that we have. So when I say institutions, I mean the masjid, I mean the youth and community group, I mean the community social enterprise, I mean the businesses. Our businesses in the Muslim community do an awful lot. And these Muslim institutions need to be part of, you know, a web. You know, you hear the important African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. And so all of us need to be asking the question, like, you know, what are we? What's our contribution in this village? And I am really persuaded by hope through action. So I am a community organizer and with a charity called Citizens UK, and we have 570 different member organizations across England and Wales, and a significant number who are Muslims. And these Muslim institutions do a huge amount to connect the young people to not just society, but to their own neighborhood, their own family support units. And it's not easy, you know, often with very little money, they do this. One example, if I may share, Brother Ahmad, is Huda Masjid and Community Centre in Newtown, absolutely core estate of Birmingham. There's a shooting almost every single month. There was one just the other day, you guys saw it in national news, where a young man was shot in the back underneath a flyover. That is on the corner of that estate. And, you know, housing is a major issue. So real life, relative, if not absolute poverty going on there. But in that community, a former pub closed down by the police for drug dealing is now a masjid, a community centre. I was only there last Friday night, and they do tremendous work. And these are not just older people who are exhausted volunteering. There are young people having just come back from work, running youth club activity sessions there. There are mothers spending time with other mothers. And of course, there are also fathers there hanging out between Maghrib and Isha. So with that kind of sense of effort, work ethic, it's not enough just to do a bayan and a talk.
Yes.
And, people feel like, oh man, we got to be better Muslims. You got to put the actions after that. And the actions are putting on, whether it's football, whether it's activities, whether it's even trips, or whether it's just a place to hang out so that people can feel safe. And I don't think we prioritize that enough. And the more we do that, the more and also learn from other communities. Our young people in the Muslim community are just like other young people in other communities, have the same aspirations, drives, fears, vulnerabilities. And so in community organizing, there is a connection between churches, synagogues, mosques, but not just faith institution, other institutions. So we got to create those experiences. And I just got to end with one thing before you get me to the next question. The thing that I find mesmerizing is earlier this week, I was in Small Heath with 9 and 10-year-olds. Amazing leadership. We went on a neighborhood walk in Small Heath. I got to big up Art Victoria Academy School in Small Heath. And I sit there and I see the caliber of their questions to me, to their teacher, and I have so much hope. And my other thinking was, the rest of us adults in communities and institutions, don't mess it up for them. Right? Absolutely. These amazing 8, 9-year-olds, put extra effort in for developing their aspirations. And it us as adults and institutions who let the young people down.
That's a really important point, because I was actually at a question time of young children the other day in another life, and they were asking me about climate change and what we're doing for the environment. And actually, I thought to myself, do you know what? A lot of children are doing more for the greatest emergency facing our time, like the climate, like the environment, than many of us adults are doing. They are more aware, they are more active in looking after the planet than a lot of us are, because they are not just the future, as they're often referred to. Actually, I think in many respects, they are the present. They're driving that change. And as you said, Saeed, it's us adults that are often letting them down. But let's talk about them when they're a bit older than 8, 9, 10 years old, when they're looking to see what careers they want to get into. Do enough young people see the career that you are in, community organizing, charity work, giving back to society? Do they actually see that as a viable career? Why should they get into community organizing, charity?
So in America, community organizing is a profession that's widespread. It's famously known as the job that Barack Obama did before he went into politics and became president. And so, there are many opportunities. And, when you do careers advice in America, community organizer comes up as an option. In the UK, amazing work by Citizens UK. We're in 15 towns and cities, and we have an amazing big team of professional community organizers. You get trained, it's a career. I've been 9 years as a community organizer, a huge amount of skills development. I work with amazing universities, including business schools, and the training we give and we share with them in community organizing, they find it wonderful in terms of kind of MBAs and other things they do. So at the moment, we've got a lot of work to do because, by the way, community organizing isn't community work. You don't go there and just put, activities together. Community organizing is about developing leadership. So I'm interested, as much as those 9-year-olds do a litter pick, I'm interested in how they develop their leadership skills by putting councillors, of course, Councillor Ahmad, under the scrutiny of, like, what are you going to do?
Yes.
What is the investment you're putting in our park? So and of course this whole journey. So yes, there are many different opportunities, and a lot more big third voluntary community sector organizations are have a huge amount of graduate pipelines, and do find out about them. Climate change, you mentioned, is a very good magnet for people to understand about campaigning, about policy, those kind of roles. But no, short answer, we got to do a lot more in the community, because teachers in schools are not thinking about folks like me when they want to kind of invite in and come and talk to the kids. They're thinking about my colleagues who are scientists. They're thinking about somebody else who's a lawyer or somebody else who's a banker.
So true. And actually, I remember when I was growing up, and I was actually told by various people in the education environment, you know what, you're getting yourself far too busy with too many other things. You need to focus on your education. And to a certain extent, they were right. But I remember when I received my admission letter into university, and they actually said, for all of the work that you're doing, the extracurricular activities that you've been doing was one of the reasons why my university were keen to have me as a student. And I thought to myself, wow, if only I could tell some of those people who had said to me I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. But is it an easy balance for us to get? Because of course, Saeed, we need our young people to do really well in their education. We need them to get good exam results. But at the same time, we need them to have that practical experience as well. Can we get that balance through the education we have today?
Absolutely possible. I'll give you another example. And you know them very well. Literally around the corner from that window next to me is Lazelle Central Mosque.
Yes.
Every summer, not just every summer, but also school holidays, they run a holiday club. In the summer, the holiday club had 400 young people.
Wow.
You know, parents pay, I think, £15-20 for the 4 weeks of activities. The masjid subsidized the rest. And, you know, there's some really good activities that happen. Now, who runs that? I remember talking to the trustees about it, of the mosque. They are young people who've gone to the mosques, not just madrasa system, but also their kind of youth leadership activities that they do. Those are the same young people, along with becoming hafiz, they're also actually getting places at Cambridge, Oxford, other universities. So they're absolutely doing phenomenally well in their academia. But these are the same young people you'll see on a winter's day like this, still doing activities in the masjid till 9-10 o'clock on a weekday evening. How they get their assignments done, that's amazing. So when the young people actually see, so they, there's this thing, you can't be what you can't see. When they see right in front of them a young lad who just lives up the road from them, who's doing all of this, and they want to be like that. And so there are loads of examples more, coming up. But we need to give that exposure. Do not assume that the extended family network that Muslims tend to be having, do not think that there is an uncle or auntie sitting down giving career advice to that young man or young woman. They're not. Sometimes I just kind of feel it's so competitive. And waiting for that Eid conversation with your uncle isn't good enough. Right? You need to talk to your uncle before your GCSE results come out, or after it comes out. So don't assume the family network's doing its bit. It's in my experience when I talk to families, it isn't doing enough. So we need those institutions, to be far more effective than just places of salah and just places of business and places of service.
We are coming up to a break. We're going to carry on talking to you after this side. It is fascinating to hear the importance of the masjid, the community center, the church, the synagogue, the hub of the community in influencing and shaping young people and who they become, and how fundamental these structures are to who we are and what we become. We'll be back right after this break. Stay tuned to Behind the Headlines. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the final part, would you believe it already, of Behind the Headlines here on British Muslim TV. And tonight we are speaking to a pioneer of community organising here in the United Kingdom. Brother Saidul Saeed is nowadays senior organiser at the organisation Citizens UK. And we've been talking to him about his life, his journey. Now, Saeed, from giving debt advice and helping people in debt in 2001, when you started your career, to now becoming one of the leading lights for community organising in the country through the organisation you work for, Citizens UK. What is your day-to-day life like? What type of things do you do in community organizing as a career, as a profession?
Three things. One is campaigns. So we work with organizations, as I was saying earlier, school, churches, mosques, community group, social enterprises, universities. And between everybody in Birmingham, and it's like this in 15 towns and cities, we agree on what is the things that we want to see change in our city. So in Birmingham, we would want to see more people being paid the living wage. Muslims are disproportionately affected, who are paid low pay below that. We want to see the welcome of refugees. We want to see action on hate crime. Particularly, we want to see social housing being built. So these are the things, a range of things that communities having come together. So the job of a community organizer is to see what are the things different people and different backgrounds will put time, money, and energy into changing. And we get a lot of interest from politicians, because it's the politicians we hold to account almost every single year in big events we call assemblies. But the other thing, which is less known, everyone knows Citizens UK and community organising as around campaigns, is leadership development. As I told you, working with 9-year-olds to working with 90-year-olds, in a synagogue, we do a curriculum that comes from the civil rights movement, in particular, but also has roots, significant roots in our tradition in Quran and Sunnah. You can learn a lot about community organising from the hadith and the actions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then the third thing that we huge amount of time we spend doing is working with individual communities. So whether it's a mosque or church, and those in looking at how they how they are strengthened, so how they can be more effective rather than just being a building. Too often, that's what some of our schools and mosques are. They're a building they're going to, but connect them back to their roots. Our masjids have been a place of justice. Our masjids have been a place of sanctuary. Our masjids have been a place of course, absolutely ibadah. So, how do we kind of reconnect them to the missions? And it's not me on my own. I work with several different teams in each of these places. So the community organizes three things: campaigns, leadership development. Like we go to maktabs and Clifton Road Mosque, KSMC. We have a program with the maktab there for teaching the children on public speaking and leadership. So they get to enjoy our curriculum even though they're going to be at school. So that, and then the last one is strengthening those community organizations from being buildings to places of energy and change.
It's incredible when you speak about the work that you do, the diversity of the work you do, and the sheer need that each of those strands to which you refer beautifully addresses. And I just want to focus on a key aspect there around leadership development. Now, a lot of what you spoke about there would be things that a lot of our viewers would associate with private school, prep schools, those parents out there who have a lot of money. They'll be able to engage their children in those sorts of activities. Young people will be able to access that type of development, that type of leadership. But how important is this for young people that you work with from economically deprived backgrounds like yourself, Brother Saeed? What difference does it have? How do they engage with you when you say, do you know what, I'm going to put you on a leadership development program? What's their reaction to that?
So at first, I think they're going to be in a classroom taking notes. Then they soon realize they're going to meet politicians and they're going to have to negotiate change. And they realize they're going to have to do public speaking in front of hundreds of people in a university hall. Then they got to realize they're going to be interviewed by journalists, which is amazing. So when they realize what it entails, it's absolutely unique. And of course, they get to write about it in their CVs. They get to talk about it in UCAS interviews or applications and university interviews. So for the individual self, it's amazing. And of course, whenever our young people are involved on the stage or in a major kind of campaign, you got the most proudest parents. We have so many stories of hundreds of parents turning up to assemblies who are, of course, they care about the agenda and the topic, but, rooting for the young people. We have young people who've persuaded the mayor of the West Midlands to, put in half-price travel and pay their real living wage. So it's what I tend to say in our leadership development. They are not going to go be doing an awareness raising poster, and definitely they're not going to do a face painting open day. They got to do the hard edge change. So when they're in talking about it years later, whether it's a job application or a university one, like you says, when you went for your interview, they were more impressed about your extracurricular stuff, which they were blown away by. So we want more. We want to create a factory of a pipeline of more young people having those options. Ultimately, the community benefits, the Muslim community benefits.
Yes.
So we don't just create, machines who are going to be replaced by AI, who are so slowly have become so further away from FIDA for their family and their community. We create these rounded individuals who are not only going to achieve in their sectors whatever they're going to do, but they're going to lift not the Muslim community and the neighbors and everybody in a particular area. So you create a rounded leader rather than someone who's a leader, let's just say, in engineering.
And that support network that you put around that young person with the potential of being a leader, but needs that support, needs that guide, needs that engagement in order for them to understand the difference that they can make. And you mentioned the way in which young people have been able to influence the mayor of the West Midlands, they've been able to influence senior politicians and drive change. Those are experiences that will remain with them for the rest of their lives and will influence them in terms of what they can do. Perhaps you can share with us some stories of young people that you've engaged with and their trajectory in life, their view of life and what they would become in their own perspective has changed as a result of that engagement.
Absolutely. I'm just going to take 30 seconds, if I may, with Ahmad, put some context on this. So this is Islamophobia Awareness Month. When we're reading the reports and the famous comments by Baroness Vazi and others, it's one of during the pandemic, hate crime went up. And of course, when hate crime goes up, a significant percentage of hate crime is aimed at Muslims. So there is an awful lot to be pessimistic about. We heard about the migrant deaths in the channel. But what this leadership development does is creates people's own source of power and energy, to lead us. So when you and I are away from the limelight or away from, our roles and we're retired, these we don't have to wait long. I think in the next few months, they are the people who be given. We become followers, right? They are leaders.
Yes.
And not just our peers, they become our leaders. And so they pioneer, they develop. So that's really important context in terms of young people who are doing this. So I wanna lift up Zainab Ismail. So Zainab is the chair of the Huda Youth Committee I mentioned earlier to you, and has been doing phenomenal work in terms of trying to improve opportunities for families in the area. So she is now involved in putting our first leadership development program together during the weekends.
Wow.
It's phenomenal. She has a day job in finance, and she gives us phenomenal amount of time to the masjid. And she's one of our leadership. She's a young person in her 20s in particular, but she's a key member of our leadership group in Citizens UK. So she's not there to observe. She's basically my boss, right, along with the other leadership group members. And Zainab's story started when, she came to share a story and, she thought she was just going to talk to a group of people with a PowerPoint. She wasn't. She was going to be in the town hall in front of 600 people. So, that kind of encouragement. And of course, the amazing thing about leadership development is to pass it on. Right. So if you develop a person in terms of leadership and they do absolutely nothing with it in terms of developing others, then it kind of stops, right? So the phenomenal work she's trying to do with the other people with the youth committee. So youth committee are no longer teenagers; they're in their 20s. They're getting married, they're going to have babies of their own fairly soon. But that pipeline is absolutely phenomenal. And other stories of 10-year-old Isaac, who spoke very powerfully. All he knows in Birmingham is homeless accommodation. That's what he's lived in. You're familiar with his story,
yes.
And he spoke directly, very powerfully to the mayor of the West Midlands. And on the first day of the mayor's office, he said social housing is his priority. Not enough has been done in his previous time. And this hasn't come back because of amazing, clever, geeky people like me. This has come back from the courage and bravery of young people to be public and share their stories, but not share their stories as just we feel sorry for them as victims, but share their stories as someone to be taken charge and notice of, and as leaders.
Absolutely, absolutely. And finally, Saidul Saeed, briefly, if you would, about 30 seconds or so, what would be your advice to young people assessing their options and aspirations right now?
Go online, because you're spending half of your life online anyway, and check out about change. Put in campaigns, put in about making a difference. And start off. Come and visit our website, citizensuk.org, and check out what your town and city near you, or what we call a chapter near you, is doing, and you'll meet some phenomenal people. So absolutely go online. And check us out, and a huge range of other people in the community. You are talent, you will do phenomenally well. There's careers, you'll develop your salary range. Of course, lots of benefits. Some of the community sector employers they highly rank in HR, in staff satisfaction. But all of those things, before you think about, go for it. Check us online.
Brother Saidul Saeed, Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for sharing with us your personal journey in life, where you've got to today, and emphasizing the importance of leadership and leadership development within our own communities. The critical role we all need to put on the hubs of our community, the masajid and the community centers that are so pivotal to our success. We'll be back next week. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.